So the fact, what's going to happen is when I paint now into this, I'm going to get some soft edges where the paint's going to just blend out. And then where it hits those dry spots of paper, I'm going to get some hard edges too. So let's start off with a really pale blue. Just going to take a bit of that ultramarine and add quite a bit of water to it. I've also got a cloth on hand to just stop any drips and runs that might happen. Always handy to have that. So that's okay. So I've got some blues happening up here. The nice thing about watercolor is, also the scary thing, you don't always know what it's going to do. So it's always quite exciting just to see what's going to happen. So I'm just drying off my brush a little bit. Just going to blend out some of these so they don't dry into hard edge shapes. Okay, so just a very, very pale blue. Might just add a little bit more in here. Okay. It's running into this area here where I'm going to be painting this land. I don't need to worry about that because I'm going to be painting quite dark over this. So any rough edges I've got are just going to be covered up completely. Leaving some whites in there just to show the sort of crests of those, the peaks of that foam as we come into the foreground. Okay, let's just blend that out a little bit. And then as I come into the foreground, the water is going to hit the sand. I'm going to put a bit more detail in the water, I think, next. So I want to leave a few little white edges where the waves are breaking up against the rocks, but I want to get some waves in here. I'm going to use a flat brush for that. Just to get those straight, it's just easy to put those straight lines of those waves in with a flat brush. So I'm going back to my slightly greenish mixture. Watercolor is transparent, of course. So what's going to happen is as I paint in layers, it's going to get the previous layer of paint's going to show through. And it's going to make for some darker tones as I paint these on. So let's put one here. As the waves breaking here, we've got a bit of shadow underneath the foam. We've also got some shadows around the rocks here and some waves breaking. And it's just as we come over this way, it's just getting lighter. So I'm just going to leave that as it is. Let's put another, just dab a few little marks on here to indicate the shadow under the breaking wave. So I'm painting along. You can see the beads starting to form along the bottom. If your studio is a bit warm like mine, although it's not too bad at the moment, paint can tend to dry quite quickly. So sometimes you need to work a bit quicker. Because as soon as that starts to dry, you're going to get streaks appearing. So I'm just going to bring it down. I'm just going to leave a few little white patches here, just around where that land meets the sea, just to indicate some surf just breaking on those rocks. Okay. What I'm going to do is, so I've got a very pale wash of burnt umber here. So rather than add a color like black to it, which is just going to make it dull, I'm going to add some blue to it. I'm not going to go too deeply into color theory, but here's a color wheel. If you take a color and you want to darken it, or mute it, let's say blue, for instance. If you've got a blue which is a bit too bright, or you want to make it a bit darker, add a bit of its complementary color, which is the color directly opposite it on the color wheel. I'm not going to go too much into this because that's a whole subject in itself, and I've got quite a few posts on my website about that, so you can always check those out, where I talk about color theory. Also, on my successful watercolor landscapes course, I go into that in a lot more detail. But blue's not quite a complementary of burnt umber. Burnt umber's more bit of a neutral, but it's close, and it's just going to mute it. But I'm going to keep it to a nice warm color. And yeah, so I'm just going to mix those two together. A few little rough indications. So I've got a figure here of a person walking a dog on the beach. Just going to put in a little mark and just going to indicate a little dot for the head. And what grounds the figure is just putting in a shadow. So like I say, the light's coming from this direction, so they're going to cast a shadow on the ground. So I'm just going to put in a little shadow underneath them there. I've got another little figure walking over here. Just going to indicate it with a little dot. Okay. I could put in a few darker details just in the surf. If I wanted to. One thing I could do, I like to do this sometimes, is take an old toothbrush.
It's good, isn't it?
Yes.
Get some paint on my toothbrush, and hang on, I'll just grab a sheet of paper here. So I'm just going to cover up the top half of my painting. I'm just going to flick some paint onto the sand there, just to give the sand a little bit of texture. And always good to know when to stop, I think, with the painting. So if you can keep adding more and more details, and you end up kind of overworking it. So I'm just going to leave that one there. I think we're just about out of time anyway. So let's just get the tape off, see what we've got. Okay, so we've got a nice little border around the painting. So yeah, that's pretty much all I've got for today, folks. Thanks very much for joining me. Just a couple of things. I'll take some questions if there are any, but I just wanted to mention that I do a regular live class it's Monday here in New Zealand. It's Sunday if you're in the States. Run about the same time for an hour and a half. And you can find details of that on my website, which is solvingwatercolor.com. And that's watercolor spelled the English way with a C-O-L-O-U-R, not color the American way, C-O-L-O-R. So solvingwatercolor.com, you can find details of my Zoom lessons on there. If you buy a block of 5 lessons, you get it for the price of 4. So that's a pretty good deal.